So the real story of this year's State of the Nation isn't what was promised. It's what now has to be delivered. You see, as always, there was a lot in the speech, but if you zoom out, much of it comes down to a couple big themes: tackle organized crime, deal with the water crisis, keep the lights on, get freight and port moving again, and try to unlock some growth and jobs. And so this wasn't about unveiling some brand new direction. It was about getting the basics to function again. But here's where things get slightly more interesting. You see, across energy, rail, port, and water, there is a clear push to make more room for private participation, as in businesses investing alongside the state to help rebuild more capacity. And so no, government isn't stepping away. It's simply saying we'll restructure, we'll regulate, we'll fix bottlenecks. And that should make it easier for companies to participate in and improve these South African systems. But that only works if the bottlenecks actually get fixed. Now, we've already seen what happens when the door is technically open, but the systems still slow things down. Critics point to how our independent power producers have been allowed into the electricity market to produce power alongside Eskom. Yet the project still faces technical and institutional blockers. And so the question becomes, is this another year of signaling support to the private sector, or is the government actually going to deliver? So yeah, opening the door is one thing, but making it easy to walk through is another. You see, investors can be keen, but if approvals drag and infrastructure doesn't improve, then participation and progress nosedives. And so that's why this SONA feels less like a new direction and more like a practical test. You see, the promises are clear, but for the private sector to actually help stabilize water, speed up freight, and strengthen power reform, government has to remove the bottlenecks that keep slowing it down. So beyond the growth talk, this year's State of the Nation had a harder edge. You see, President Ramaphosa spent a significant amount of time on organized crime, from construction mafias and cable theft to syndicates targeting freight corridors. And so the message was pretty blunt. You can't rebuild rail, fix power, or stabilize water if criminal networks are feeding off those very systems. Because this isn't just about crime stats, it's about capacity. You see, if infrastructure projects are delayed by intimidation, if cables are stripped faster than they are replaced, if freight lines are sabotaged, these reforms slow before they even start. And furthermore, against the backdrop of the Malanga Commission, which is currently probing allegations of organized crime influence within parts of law enforcement, it raises a tougher question here. Are the people meant to enforce the rules keeping syndicates out, or are they actively contributing to the problem? And so that's why enforcement featured so prominently. More oversight, tighter controls, direct presidential involvement, and the likes of water accountability. Because unless the state can keep syndicates out of the system and ensure that those enforcing the rules aren't compromised themselves, then rebuilding our country's systems becomes a far more difficult task. So if you bought data in the last 6 months, there's a chance that some of that money flowed through Cell C, even if you've never had a Cell C SIM card. You see, just this week, in its first set of results since listing on the JSE in November, the company announced something that would have sounded impossible a couple of years ago. It's suddenly back in profit. So on paper, Cell C made about 3.5 billion rand in 6 months, a dramatic swing from last year's loss. But here's the catch. Most of that jump didn't come from selling more airtime. It came from restructuring and wiping old debt off the books before listing. And that matters because while Cell C has been growing, especially through partnerships where banks and retailers sell mobile services on its platform, the underlying growth is steady but not explosive. Think of it less as a sales boom and more like clearing your credit card before showing your bank statement. Now that said, analysts say that there are real signs of stability. You see, prepaid customers are up, those bank and retail partnerships are expanding, and its debt load has more than halved. You see, its balance sheet is cleaner. The question now isn't whether Cell C can fix its past, it's whether it can grow in a brutally competitive market without these accounting cleanups doing the heavy lifting. And before we cruise on to our Bagel Bite of the day, here's a couple other headlines worth knowing. For starters, South Africa is in talks with BYD, Suzuki, and Proton to set up local factories as government pushes Chinese brands to build cars in the country as opposed to just shipping them in. And look, that shift is already underway with Chery acquiring Nissan's Rossum plant to begin local production by mid-2026. MTN has been drawn into a diplomatic dispute after Congo accused its Rwanda units of illegally providing signal coverage to the rebels in the eastern regions. Now, MTN says that it doesn't even operate in the Congo, but cross-border tower spillover is now a geographical flashpoint. And President Ramaphosa is in Addis Ababa for the African Union Summit, where water and sanitation headline the 2026 agenda, even as many South African communities face dry taps and a newly announced National Water Crisis Committee at home. And on to our Bagel Bite of the day, but first, just a side note, if you are enjoying the show, put a smile on my dial and hit that like and subscribe button, please. It makes all the difference. And now, with that out the way, let's see what you got. The question is, what is the only letter not appearing in any US state name? Is it A, the letter Q, B, the letter X, or C, the letter Z? We'll give you the answer at the end of the show. There's a bridge in South Africa where people willingly step off the edge from 216 meters above the ground. That's the height of Wildcard's bridge, and 216 meters may not sound like much until you anchor it with a couple examples. So to visualize it, picture the Cape Ferris wheel. Now stack another 4 on top. Picture the Soweto Towers. Now double them. Or picture the Moses Mabhida Stadium arch. Now add another one on top. That is the drop. But in case you didn't know, Wildcard wasn't purpose-built for this bungee jumping thrill. It's a functioning national road bridge along the N2 linking the Eastern and Western Cape. And in 1997, someone peeked over the edge and thought, you know what? We could monetize this. So today it's the highest commercial bridge bungee jump in the world. And the jump is a straight drop from the road deck into the gorge below. You simply walk out onto the suspended platform beneath the bridge, look straight down into the Wildcard River, and step forward. And so look, while this certainly isn't for me, if you've been one of the thousands who have stepped off that edge, we'd love to hear about your experience. And as for that Bagel Bite, the answer is Q, the only letter that doesn't make an appearance in any US state name. X shows up in Texas and New Mexico, and Z makes an appearance in Arizona. And my friends, that's it for today's show. Thanks so much for tuning in. I hope you guys had a great weekend. Wishing you a cracker Monday ahead, and we'll catch you all tomorrow for the next round of the good stuff. God bless.